Ooh. What up? What up? What up? What up, everybody? What's good? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We here to pick off where we left off yesterday. Let's get some more people up in the building. Like I started to come in and talk about how was my day at work, give it from a military point of view, tell y'all how we did, how was we like our alert. But it was really good day. You know what I mean? It's always a good day when America makes a way, you know? And I was shocked. What's good? How you doing, Hema? Appreciate you stepping in the building. Hit that like, we been on for a few minutes, like what, 2 minutes. I came in, I tried to get here on time. I know I'll be slacking, but hi to you. But we back in the building. Last night we did good. We had we got up to what 25,000 views. The trolls wasn't that many. We had real intellectual conversations. So we here to pick up or where we left off yesterday with the intellectual conversation. I don't know, you know what I mean? I might have to put on the glasses to show y'all I'm serious. I'm about business tonight. Put on these meta glasses to let y'all know it's real, you know? But we definitely having a good time. Shout out to Rumble. Shout out to Uncle Mo TV. Shout out to what's the other joint? True Story. You know what I mean? I see over there we got 7 people watching over there. Was good. I need to I'm gonna pop out the chat so I can see both. But what's good? How are you? What's good? Welcome. So I had to change the strip a little because now, as we know, they done called the ceasefire. So it ain't even the same ball game. We was gonna talk about how the boy Trump, they had a little retaliation today. They try to send some shots our way to our bases that we had over in Qatar, and it was epic failure, We the word on the streets is they notified us before, so and they was able to intercept. It was able to intercept all their missiles. We had 0 casualties on deck. And that's always a good day that we ain't losing. But I feel like that was all the save face. That was the save face. That was for them to be like, we did something before we surrender, before we decide that we gonna give America their way. Cause I think they know it was gonna get real ugly. But they gave them a heads up. So that's I guess it is what it is. They got to save face. They don't feel like America just totally was punking them, but then next thing you know, we get the ceasefire, which is always good to have peace. Like I ain't even gonna hold you and say that we don't want peace, we don't like peace. We always want peace. But like I told y'all yesterday, in order to have peace, you gotta have war. You gotta have some type of, to show that you willing to put something behind that. That's how I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have to add some joint where I can see both chats. trying to put it where I can see. All right, now I'm like, man, I'm trying. Now I can see everybody on both chat. We about to play this, I appreciate all y'all that came over to No Glory True Stories, Don't wanna hit that like, subscribe if you new. Sit back and enjoy. All us over here. Ceasefire is great for everybody. That's what I'm saying. Like, put the poll up. We only got 2 votes. Only 2 people think that is good. Don, I think that is great for both sides because we don't want to shed blood, especially unnecessary blood, There's no need to, what I mean? Not for no unnecessary blood we don't need to shed. I know. I'm all for, I'm pro-America, but let's hear this out.
All right, and Blaze, I do want to ask you about this because as we talk about it, a very fluid, dynamic situation taking place right now. We are now hearing from President Trump that Iran and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire, and I'm going to read this statement to give you a little bit of time to also kind of come to terms with what this means. And this from the president saying, "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed to by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their final missions. For 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the end of the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war." And this is a war that could have gone on for years, destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America. God bless the world. This coming in from the president. So, Blaze, that happened very quickly, calling for that ceasefire. What's your initial reaction?
Well, I think this is a clear demonstration of peace through strength and the role that American might plays in keeping our country and the world safe. It was the U.S. entry into this conflict, the demonstration of both the capabilities that we have and the will to use them that I think has led to this possibility of Iran backing down and also of eliminating the rest of Iran's nuclear program, which now enables this conflict to end. So rather than the World War III and the possibility of endless wars that many were concerned about, it was the U.S. use of force that really made possible peace in this case, and it's hopefully a good outcome for the United States and for Israel now that Iran has largely been defanged.
And this is all coming in right now, and of course calling it the 12-day war, saying this is could have gone on for years, destroyed the entire Middle East. And I imagine this only gives us more optimism about negotiations to take place between the United States, knowing that these are on the table, that there will not be any conflict necessarily between these two, right?
Yeah, certainly it's hopeful that this might then lead to negotiations. The Israelis have always said that their plan was a 2-week plan of operations, which we were about 2 or 3 days away from them completing, which largely leads, I think, to their willingness to call a ceasefire. I think they've accomplished much of what they've wanted to accomplish. And the question will now be: is this just a ceasefire and everybody walks away and things go back to as they were, or will this lead to more negotiations and a deal that might actually fully dismantle Iran's nuclear program?
All right, but another obvious positive step forward for the region. All right, Blaise Mistal, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your insight here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're continuing to follow all of these breaking news events coming in real time as President Trump saying congratulations to everyone, saying it has fully agreed between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. Of course, this, again, the post on social media, on Truth Social from the president saying officially Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. Upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. So, of course, during each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. So obviously a big news coming in here just past 6 o'clock on the East Coast about this ceasefire between Israel and Iran. We'll see what comes next here on Live Now from Fox. We'll keep our eyes on it. Right now, we'll slide away for a quick 2-minute break.
So this the catch though.
About what happened with Iran in the Middle East and some breaking news coming.
How long do we think that is gonna last? Do we think they're negotiating in good faith? Or do they think, okay, Val Smith, thank you for subbing to the channel. You see the little dance we do when you sub. Appreciate that. And thanks for the 44 people that subbed last night. But let's open this dialogue up. Ceasefire right now. The votes are in. 83% say yes, this is good. 17% says that no. Like, I want to know out of the 17, why do you think this is a bad idea on the ceasefire? I don't see how could it be bad. You know what I mean? Like, why are you not happy with it? You know, I'm happy of it because I feel like it's a temporary fix. You know, I don't know if it's a permanent fix. I feel like it's a temporary fix, and we got to see, are they negotiating in good faith? And we also got to see if Israel, do they know how to behave? Because I don't know if you noticed, but they feel like they the little brother that always starts shit and run to their big brother for help. And they big brother being the US, that they back them. But we've been playing with these cats, going back and forth with Iran since the 70s. Now 75% is saying that they feel that this ain't a good idea, or they not happy with it. But we've been going back and forth with them since the 70s. Like, I was researching all day, and I was at work. As y'all know, Uncle Mo serves this country. I'm in the military, and today was pretty normal. It wasn't like no heightened security threat. Like, it was pretty normal, like regular, like our regular training, our regular, you know, we moved, you know, regular, you know. It wasn't a crazy day at all. Let's see what the vice president got to say. Like last night, man, I would never not see him as looking like a vampire. They say he looked like a vampire brought back from the dead. But let's see what our vice president is talking.
Just now, joining us this evening,
and then we're going to see what the left
Mr. Vice
is
President,
saying
thanks
too.
for coming.
Absolutely, thank you.
Just seconds ago, the president went to Truth Social and typed this. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. Complete and total ceasefire is what he typed.
Yep.
What does that mean? How did it come about? What's the development here?
Well, we were actually working on that just as I left the White House to come over here. So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line. I think what it means, Brett, is quite simple. First of all, the president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very...
How many of y'all believe that they incapable? I don't know if they incapable. I think we might have slowed them down. I think we made them vulnerable, but I don't know if they incapable. You think they incapable? Let me know about that. Let me know how you feel about that. I think we might have just slowed them down. I don't think they incapable. I don't know how long it'll take for them to get on their feet, but it's too much hate in their heart for us.
Very, very big thing. Now, what that means, I think, is we have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds. Because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. And I think that's what the president is really trying to figure out here, is to build a long-term settlement here to where we can have peace in the region, where our regional allies and, of course, the American people, most importantly, can be secure.
It was evidence that they was close. It was evidence that they was close. That's why we even knew where to go and where to hit and how to hit it. Like, they went into more details today on why they hit the nuclear plant and earlier today Israel had bombed the same site and bombed the roads up to the site too for their main site. So they had some type of intelligence that told them that, you know, this was the right time to strike and had to strike, that it was danger. 73% is happy for the ceasefire. 27% is not. Let's go.
But where we can ensure that the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program that has already happened is not something they try to rebuild.
I want to get to the obliterated part in just a minute, but I just want to read this fully so I get the context here. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours. At which point, the ceasefire for 12 hours.
Sure.
At which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America. And God bless the world. He seems confident that this is all coming together.
That's right.
And when you left the White House, were you thinking this was all gelling here?
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line before this broadcast, and it looks like the president has been able to do that. I mean, look, he's been working the phones constantly. Frankly, before the 12-day war started, but certainly over the past 12 days, the president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. We, of course, destroyed the nuclear program that they had, and the president told the entire team, we're going to work to make sure that they don't try to rebuild that nuclear capability in the future. And it's, look, this is a great thing. For Israel, think about this. They've accomplished an important military objective. They've helped us destroy the Iranian nuclear program. They've also destroyed the conventional missile capability of Iran that threatened the country of Israel. For the Iranians, I think this is a new opportunity to actually pursue the path of peace. As I said yesterday, what the Iranians have showed through their support of terror networks, through their now failed effort to build a nuclear weapon, is that they're just not very good at war. And I think the president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region. That's always been his goal. I actually think when we look back, we will say the 12-day war was an important reset moment for the entire region.
Would you be surprised if Iran is sending out signals that it doesn't have a specific ceasefire plan? How would the communication have been with the Iranians to get this level of confidence to put out that detailed statement?
Well, one of the things I've learned, Brett, about the Iranians in the past, 4 or 5 months that I've been in this job is what they say publicly and privately can sometimes be very different. I think what the Iranians have shown very clearly is they don't want this war to go on for much longer. Their air defenses have been totally destroyed. Their conventional missile program has been largely destroyed. And of course, their nuclear program has been obliterated, as I said before. So I think the Iranians are at a place where they don't want to keep on fighting. You saw the president, and I don't have the truth in front of me, but he talked about the next 6 hours finalizing the attacks. I mean, I think what he's talking about is right now, for the American people watching, it's dark over there. That's typically when the Israelis and the Iranians have been shooting at each other. I think there's some recognition that that might continue for another few hours, and tomorrow really is a new day. The end of the 12-day war, the end of the Iranian nuclear program, and I really do believe the beginning of something very big for peace in the Middle East.
So you said totally obliterated. The president has said totally obliterated the Iran nuclear program.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium?
That's what I was about to say. I don't know, like they ain't have time to assess the damage, so I don't know how they could say it's totally obliterated. I think we put a dent in it, but nobody's gonna go out there and say, "Hey, we did a decent job," or "We did it." But to make them agree to a ceasefire, they definitely got their point across. They made them know that we are willing to use our capabilities to put a stop to this. So I can respect that.
Is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the two mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think this is an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
sure, 60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern, and that's what was so successful about our mission.
So after all this, if the Iranian government survives as is, what's to stop it from rebuilding over time if they in fact moved the 60% highly enriched uranium? You know, that's the concern.
No, the big concern, Brett, and this is again what we destroyed, is their ability to enrich uranium. If they have 60% enriched uranium, but they don't have the ability to enrich it to 90%, and further, they don't have the ability to convert that to a nuclear weapon, that is mission success. That is the obliteration of their nuclear program, which is why the president, I think, rightly is using that term. But here's the question. If Iran is desperate to build a nuclear weapon in the future, then they're going to have to deal with a very, very powerful American military again. Our hope is that the lesson that the Iranians have learned here is, look, we can fly a bunker buster bomb from Missouri to Iran completely undetected without landing once on the ground, and we can destroy whatever nuclear capacity you build up. I think that lesson is what's going to teach them not to rebuild their nuclear capacity.
Yesterday, were you speaking on the president's behalf when you said he was not interested in regime change?
Well, Brett, what I've said is the American military, that is not our mission as regime change. Our mission was to destroy the nuclear facilities and the nuclear program of Iran, which we, of course, did. I think what the president's also said is that the Iranian people want to make a decision about regime change. That's between the Iranian people and the regime. Of course, we support freedom fighters all around the world, but our mission was to destroy the nuclear facilities, and that's what we did.
So you don't think there's any mixed message when he goes to Truth Social and says it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA.
Well, I think what the president is saying very clearly, Brett, is if the Iranian people want to do something about their own leadership, that's up to the Iranian people. What the American national security interest here is very simple. It's to destroy the nuclear program. That's what we've done. And now that the 12-day war appears to be effectively over, we have an opportunity, I think, to restart a real peace process. And Brett, this is not just about two countries, Iran and Israel. All of these Gulf Arab states, they want peace. They want to invest. They want to build artificial intelligence hardware. They want to sort of come into the new economy. And that was impossible when you had Iran that was, as the president said, acting like a bully across the Middle East. We really think that if the Iranians are smart about the path forward, this could be a new dawn of an economic age of prosperity, of course, for our Gulf Arab allies, for us, for the Israelis, for everybody. But it's going to require the Iranians play it smart from here.
The president called it very weak, the Iran missile firing on the U.S. base in Qatar, Al Udeid. Was it a face-saving move? How do you get from that, firing missiles at a U.S. base, to a ceasefire, as he details in this Truth Social?
Well, as the president said, they actually gave us some warning here. And we think they gave us some warning because they didn't want to kill Americans and they didn't want to escalate. There's definitely some symbolism to this, Brett. If you look at the Iranian attack.
And that's what I was saying. Like, they did an attack on the base, but you gave a warning. That was just to show they peoples that they wasn't totally, that they could put up a little fight before they surrender. Because they could have saved they could have saved the little bit of weapons they had. So there was a lot of people in outrage about that, and we'll get into that too because he's talking a whole bunch of fucking nothing anyway. But we'll get into that about the attacks that they put on us. Yeah.
Ambassador, I've just been alerted to a post from the president. We were discussing his messaging. This is brand new. The caveats are the president of the United States has just posted news of what he's calling a ceasefire. We don't have fact checking yet or statements yet from other parties. So you're learning this along with our audience. I'm curious your reaction. I'm going to read. This is also a Truth Social post from President Trump. He says it has been fully agreed. Again, claims by the
First thing, who's his yes man? The vice president?
president, quote, by and between Israel and Iran, there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours. And then he says that will go on for 12 hours, quote, at which point the war will be considered, and the president in his style writes in all caps, ended. Again, reading further from the new statement moments ago, quote, officially Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to what he is calling this 12-day war, which will, the president says, be saluted by the world. And he goes on to include other details. My question to you is, given this is coming from one side, but either quickly will be confirmed or not, that's how we track these stories, what is your response, and what does that sound like to you, given your voluminous diplomacy experience, that time scale as announced here by the president?
Well, I believe it, and I believe it for a simple reason. We saw the Iranians retaliate today at two places, al-Assad base, where they hit before or after Qasem Soleimani was killed, and Al Udeid base in Qatar. There were no American casualties. It put the Iranians in a position where they could say, we retaliated. One thing Khamenei could not do was look like they simply surrendered to us. So by retaliating, he claimed we retaliated.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Like, they just did that shit so they could tell their peoples that they put up a fight, even though they really didn't, But that shit was symbolism to throw some shots that they know we was going to intercept.
He can claim we inflicted damage on Israel. So they're in a position where they can say, okay, we stood up, we didn't give in. The Israelis were in a position where their military was saying we were pretty close to exhausting all the targets that we needed to be able to take out. And I think that the president, all along, he never wanted to get into what he calls the forever wars in the Middle East. He took on his own base in this regard, who clearly people like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon were very much against taking this step. And his wanting to show that he could use force and then produce a ceasefire quickly makes, in my mind, very credible. The fact that Iran took a step and they can say we did it puts them in a position where they can end it. I would also say whether Prime Minister Netanyahu was prepared right now to end it or not, I think he couldn't say no to President Trump on this. And my guess is there's some possibility that this was even coordinated in advance. I could see an understanding where the president said to Bibi, we will do this, but after we do it, the war has to end. I wouldn't
with an
be
off-ramp
shocked
ready. So let me ask you, Ambassador, if this ceasefire holds, President Trump, just here in these moments, breaking news, has announced, posting online, a ceasefire, Israel, Iran, U.S. If this ceasefire holds, is durable, is this a significant foreign policy win for the Trump administration?
It is, but let's look at it. It is, to be fair, it is. The question will be, how do you translate and turn the ceasefire into something that's enduring? The ceasefire is exactly what it says. You're ceasing fire. Does that mean it can't be resumed? Are there understandings about if Iran begins to try to reconstitute its nuclear program? Are there any understandings there? Is there going to be a negotiation now that basically deals with the future of the Iranian nuclear infrastructure? I mean, the reason that we ended up using force was precisely because the president came to the conclusion that the negotiations that we were conducting with them which were designed to ensure that there was no enrichment on the Iranian side, he basically came to the conclusion he couldn't achieve that.
That's my thing too. Is how long it's gonna last? Because it was like just what, an hour, 2 hours ago, they was just saying that they vow to retaliate and this and that, and then an hour later they talk about kumbaya. So I wonder how long it's gonna last for.
Diplomatically. Now, does he believe that's achievable? I suspect that the Iranians will come back. They may make a concession on actually enriching. I think it'll be very hard for them to give up the right of enrichment. I suspect that the face saver for them, just like the face saver of retaliating against Al Udeid base, was to say we did it. The face saver for them will be something like we retain the right to enrich. It will be interesting to see, is there an understanding on that? The larger question here, though, Ari, is we have a ceasefire, which is very significant. Can you translate the ceasefire into what is an understanding of what the future of the Iranian nuclear infrastructure is going to be, what the future of their ballistic missile program is going to be, and what's the relationship between Iran and its proxy network?
We're joined by General Barry McCaffrey, retired four-star Army general, MSNBC military analyst. We have a battery of questions for you. We were speaking to someone you know well, Ambassador Ross, who's done a lot of Middle East diplomacy, including leading to ceasefires like this news tonight, if confirmed. So I have many questions for you, but first, your response to what the president says is this ceasefire.
Well, look, how wars end is far more long-term consequences than how they begin. On the surface, this is very good news. It's an appropriate time to stop shooting. The Iranians are at the bottom of a barrel. They have no good options, military or political. They have no allies. Most of their population despises the theocratic regime. The Israelis are tearing apart their leadership, both political and military and scientific. So they've got to get off stage. The Israelis are running out of high-tech munitions. They want to stop it. President Trump clearly does not want the war to continue. So the big question, as Ambassador Ross says, is how do we translate that into some political long-term good? How do you get them back to the table and negotiate? And how do you get them to sign a renunciation of seeking a nuclear weapon? How do you get them to say after 46 years, don't dedicate your national purpose to eliminating Israel? And if all that happens, and there's good possibility it will come out that way, then this has been an enormous change for the better in the Middle East and for U.S. national security.
Really interesting to get your, again, first order reaction to that. On the framework, we were just covering how Ambassador Ross, yourself say this sounds, if durable, like an important, significant step for the United States under the Trump administration, as was apparently the effect of bombing. At the same time, I'm quoting from the president's post on Truth Social, where he recently posted about regime change, and within hours, top people, including the Pentagon chief, were saying no, the opposite, retracting what he posted on Truth Social. Now, in detail, this sounds different, but with that in mind,
To say, is that his way of saying that he's saying the president is going to take back the ceasefire? That he going to retract what he said about this agreement? Is that what he hinting at?
I want to read to you more of the details, get your background experience on
We're gonna look
what this sounds like. Regime change is two words. You can throw it out and take it back. This has a level of detail where the president announces that basically 6 hours from now this would begin. For 12 hours it will go. And if it holds, it would then be ended. This is a rather lengthy post. I'm going to read the highlights. Officially, I'm reading from this quote, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, that would be the end to the war. So does that timeline sound like other agreements you've seen? What is your reaction to what is a lengthy statement and the details here, which for veracity at least sounds more cooked, more fully baked than some of the Truth Social posts that have recently been walked back?
Yeah, well, it sounds like very good news. It sounds like both sides actually will turn the key and stop killing each other. Iran has a lot to lose and a lot to gain. Their economy is in a shambles. Their leadership, a lot of them have been killed in the last few days, few weeks. They are under economic constraints that are asphyxiating their economy. No one's going to come to their aid, not the Chinese, not the Russians. The Sunni Arab countries, principally Gulf Coast states, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan, despise them, fear them, and want that nuclear program ended. So I think that the challenge will be this place is an abhorrent, repressive regime. Since 7 October, the demented attack on Israel, it has suffered the loss of most of its leverage. But it's got 46 years of history of hating the existence of Israel and the United States. So there's a long way to go, but this is very good news. And a lot of it, to be blunt, is the product of this daring, largely decisive strike by the United States on 3 nuclear sites. We should not underestimate the fact that this was a multi-billion-dollar, 30-year effort that has been set back substantially. Now, we also got to recognize they took their 900 pounds of 60% enriched HEU and moved it. We ought to assume that's the case. So they won't be out of the nuclear game until there are international inspectors on the ground verifying a signed treaty.
You referenced the U.S. action. We're following breaking news of the United States through President Trump online announcing the ceasefire between these two countries. And Israel has been in the thick of it with a lot of the conflict since the October attacks. But this is the announcement between these two. Tell us in plain English.
How you know it's no ceasefires? You over there? You got boots on the ground? Let us know. Put us on. Put the chat on. Let us know how you know that is no ceasefire. Mr. Mendez, let us know. You got some inside information that can help us all out, help us all gain a better understanding?
Given your military experience, what it means for the U.S. to broker this and announce this
that's cool too,
in the wake of bombing Iran. Does this imply an off-ramp for U.S. and Iran skirmishes here? Because this language, this new breaking news, does not refer to the status of the conflict between the other side of the two countries here, the U.S. and Iran.
Well, I think this is an unambiguous positive development for the Iranians, the Israelis, and us. It was clearly implemented by that magnificent Air Force attack and Navy attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. At the time, it surprised me. I thought it was a political disaster for President Trump with his own party, with the voting population, with the Democratic Party, but he executed it. To be honest, I think otherwise we would have continued in aimless discussions while the Iranians continued toward development of a weapon.
I think the peace is real for the moment. I don't know how long it's gonna hold up. I ain't sitting here saying that it's gonna hold up forever or it's gonna be, but I do think that it's real, and let's talk about their response to us hitting them.
They had promised retaliation. Tonight it came. 14 ballistic missiles fired from Iran towards America's largest Middle Eastern base. Yet for all the fire and the fury, this seems to have been a limited response. As they approached their target, the Al Udeid Air Base in Doha, the night sky was alive with interceptions.
War child, why you feel like that? Why you feel that Iran shouldn't listen? They say, all sides say they want peace, man. They don't want to lose no lives, man. They feel like, America has the upper hand. So explain, Trey W. War child, why do you feel the way you feel?
People were ordered to shelter in place. Warnings of an impending attack causing panic. Air defence is said to have taken out the barrage before any of the missiles could hit their target. The Americans said there was no damage to the base itself. The Iranians had warned the Qataris in advance that they planned to take revenge for American attacks on their nuclear sites. The Revolutionary Guard statement insisting no act of aggression against territorial integrity, sovereignty or national security would go unanswered. As much as the barrage was portrayed as a warning to America, this was also a show of strength to the Iranian public, some of whom celebrated the attempt to humble the nation they see as the great Satan.
Our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump.
It's just over a month now since Donald Trump visited Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar as part of his tour of the Middle East, promising commerce over chaos. Tonight he responded to the attack, posting on Truth Social. Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. Most importantly, they've got it all out of their system and there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same.
Ozzy, you said Trump deserved a Nobel Peace Prize?
There had certainly been no sign of peace or harmony during the day. Tehran's skyline told of a war being waged on many targets. The nuclear strikes of the weekend,
that's what I was looking for, to see if you was going to say
Israel's
China
bombardment.
too. But that's probably who told them to fall back was China, because when they was talking about closing the Straits of Hormuz, that they fail to realize is that shit is going to cripple their allies and it's going to cripple them too. Like, it costs money to go to war. And if they losing money from blocking off the supply of oil to get to their allies and to the people that's backing them up, like you said, China, North Korea, Russia, America has their own reserves of crude oil. I ain't mistaken. That's like our number one export right now is oil. So gas prices would have went up, but it would have it would have, we'd have took a little dent, but they would have closed it down though. They wouldn't have let that shit last for I couldn't expect it to last longer than a week, or we'd have took full control of they shit. We'd have dropped them. We already got like a carrier presence over there. Probably two carriers by now. They don't want that type of smoke, man. Believe me, they don't want that smoke with America. They not built like that. They not built to go up against us. They had the opportunities to go up against us, but they ain't built like that. They can't handle us. That's why America should have hit. If we're going to look at the big picture, the grand picture of things, Trey, America, that was more about us hitting Iran than we can even imagine, because we already got problems with them, and they already is with all of our adversaries. It is, if we cripple their chances of building a nuclear bomb, that's crippling the chances of them arming China or Russia. It's an arm race too, and there's also a Cold War and a show of force to show tonight. We don't give a fuck who you align with. Y'all want problems, we want problems.
In one day, 100 airstrikes were reportedly carried out by 50 fighter jets. The targets said to be the infrastructure of the Iranian government, with, according to Israel, 100 of the Revolutionary Guard Corps killed in one hit. Also in Tehran, a symbolic strike on Evin prison, where thousands of opponents and foreign detainees are held. No prisoners escaped, but Israel's message to strike at bastions of regime control was clear.
Yeah, I think that's why they wanted to hit the underground facilities, so that shit could be buried.
Hitting power plants and homes.
Did you look?
According to Iran's armed forces, these are the strikes of day.
If you look at that, It's just that thanks for the sub, man. Appreciate that. If you look at it, they what they hit, they like right now they talking about how Israel hit a lot of their infrastructure, take out their communication, took out their power structure, and then they just couldn't get down to them underground bunkers. And then that's when the US came in and did their thing to pretty much, even if they didn't destroy everything, to bury them and kill the ventilation, it'll take some time before they can even dig that shit out and rebuild, you know? It'll prolong them from being able to join the fight for a little while.
Day-to-day war, not retaliation for America's weekend attacks on the nuclear sites.
Southwest, coming from the direction of Al-Udeid.
The attack on Al-Udeid seems to have satisfied that desire and satisfied the Americans that it requires no further response. Emma Murphy, News at 10, Iraq.
Well, this is one of those nights which will have all of us scratching our heads. So as you can see, we've brought together all our experts to make sense of it. We'll hear more from Emma in Iraq near the Iranian border shortly, plus Debbie is in Tel Aviv and Carl is at the Ministry of Defense. But first, let us go to Dan in Washington. Dan, a lot of people tonight are going to be wondering what's really gone on here. It's certainly not like many conflicts we've got to know over the last couple of decades. Should we conclude that
that's why they went back and hit a lot of their sites and hit the roads leading up to they really nobody control the straits. There's a lot of those countries around them straits. They all got to be in an agreement, because you got to think, you got the Kingdom of Bahrain, you got Saudi Arabia, you got all them other countries right there too that they eat off of those straits, that they ain't gonna let Iran can try it, but they really small fries. A lot of that stuff that's aligned in that area is what you call it. They're allies with America. That's why we have bases right there in Qatar, right there in Bahrain, and in the UAE. Dubai main export is oil, and they're the closest to the straits, and we got a base right there. So Iran is, if you look at the map, Iran's at the top of the Persian Gulf. The Straits is at the bottom, right by the UAE. And so that we actually have troops there. You think it was empty? They dropped all those bombs and that. Yeah, if you look at the Persian Gulf, Iran is at the top. UAE, Bahrain, and shit is over to the left. Like we are situated right around, and we don't even like our capability with just a battle group. Iran ain't right. You see, they want to talk peace. You see, they talking peace quick. What it took 48 hours for them to change their tune. They ain't even hold out for a whole week. Israel was giving them all they have. It took 48 hours for us to make them change their whole goddamn message. You know, so I ain't even worried about, shit. I would have been the one of the ones that had to get the call if it came down to that.
The conflict between...
I deployed there a few times. Most of my career, that's where I deployed to. I only did one deployment outside of that AOR. Yeah, they ain't really talking. I want to hear somebody talk shit.
All right, this is the latest coming in at this hour. Qatar's Prime Minister secured Iran's agreement to seize U.S. ceasefire proposal in a call with Tehran. It is being reported that Trump told the Qatar, or the Emir of Qatar, that Israel had agreed to a ceasefire and asked for Qatari help to persuade Iran to also agree. Official briefed to Reuters. More details will be coming in. And Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance discussed Iran-Israel ceasefire proposal with Qatar's Emir after Iranian attacks on airbase in Qatar a short while back. So this is the latest again from Qatar. And it is being reported that Qatar's Prime Minister secured Iran's agreement to a US ceasefire proposal in a call with Tehran. It is being reported that Trump told the Emir of Qatar that Israel had agreed to a ceasefire and asked for Qatari help to persuade Iran to also agree.
I'm pretty sure they get their shit.
There are more details coming up, but we do understand that Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance discussed Israel-Iran ceasefire proposal with the Emir of Qatar after Iranian attacks on airbase in Qatar a short while back.
Iran, they probably get their shit from Bahrain and everybody.
As it stands, this is how the situation looks like at this moment. US President Donald Trump has just made an announcement of a ceasefire between Iran, the United States, and Israel. And that, what you see on your screen, is a post by the President of the United States. I'll just read again the statement to you. It says, in part, congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. I'll give you the timelines. The timelines are approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions. I now understand it's less than 5 hours. For 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end. The 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful. And
what are you talking about? How am I brain? Please elaborate. How am I brainwashed saying because I believe what the orange man said? They're saying that we came to a ceasefire. What is the brainwashing? I don't even understand your statement. You act like you hear me on here sitting here preaching and yelling and screaming at the mountaintop. So it sounds like you actually brainwashed, that you got Trump delusion syndrome, Keith. You know what I mean? Like I don't see what's the problem for wanting peace. Like, what is the issue with that? Why wouldn't you want peace? You know, why wouldn't you want peace? What's the issue with having peace? Hit the like button.
And respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, which is Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, the courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it did not and never will.
Shout out to Rumble. I see you over there. Shout out to No Glory, True Stories. I see y'all over there. The chat is acting up, so I can't really see what y'all putting in the chat, but respect y'all.
Iranian officials are stating that a ceasefire has been reached. We are waiting for word from Israel as pertains to a ceasefire, whether Israel will implement the ceasefire. It's a wait-and-see situation at this moment. We are keeping our eyes out if the Prime Minister of Israel will give a statement or if the IDF will give a statement. So let's just keep our eyes out on the latest developments as it unfolds. Dharamjot Kaur is our correspondent in the newsroom. Dharamjot Kaur, what's new?
Well, Eric, as you rightly mentioned, we are hearing of confirmations coming in from Iranian officials about the fact that Iran has agreed to the terms of the ceasefire. It is now up to Israel to put out remarks on whether or not they have also agreed to the ceasefire with Iran. However, it is yet to be noted that an official statement from both Iran and Israel is yet awaited. What we are hearing from so far is from Iranian officials who earlier spoke to us when we quoted sources telling us that Iran's supreme leader was first informed of
over at No Glory, True Stories. Like, I don't know what was wrong. I might have to log off on that other end to see the chat, because that shit was showing up on this side. It's acting up. But I'm looking on my phone to try to read that joint. 71% says that they're happy with it. Let's see. Let me go through this joint. Brandy Joseph, there's no thanks for being gullible. Trump loves that. Okay. How can I get on the live chat? You guys subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. And we definitely we gonna have interactions. I mean, if somebody ever want to come debate anything instead of just talking out their neck, I'm down for that too. Y'all just let me know. Let me know when. And we can do like we could probably do a whole day of a show of just disagreement. If you know what I mean, you could say how you disagree. We keep it respectful. And we could talk about it. A lot of people got Trump delusion syndrome. I don't care. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent that serves in the military. That's it. Regular, everyday dad, average. I'm your favorite uncle, you dig? I serve in the military, and I just give y'all my point of view. I don't give y'all the military point of view. I don't give y'all Trump point of view. I don't give you the right point of view, the left point of view. I give you my independent thoughts on things and how I see it. The stuff that I can talk about that ain't gonna, jeopardize nothing. Trey, let me read your comment. It's because these are the signs of the end. After this, there will be peace. Yeah, they don't want no problem. Just like our president sent the military into our cities because he wants peace. BS. I mean, that's an entirely different story as far as where the president actions with that, But somebody asks, where did China get their oil from? Hold on, let me see. Hey Meta, where do China get their oil from? Said China get their oil from various countries like Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Oman. They said it varies from time to time. I just, I wish I could hook the mic up from the glasses to my microphone where y'all could hear the responses that they said. But they say that they get their oil from various spots,
US President's announcement, how negotiations were still going on. Then just moments ago, we heard of Iranian officials confirming that yes, an agreement in principle has been reached. However, all of these are still information that's coming from singular officials or lawmakers in Iran. It's not still an official statement that contains all the details and all the provisions and caveats of the ceasefire. On the other hand, we haven't heard from any Israeli official confirming or denying. There has been absolute silence on the Israeli end with respect to the ceasefire. We just saw a report from New York Times a while ago where an Israeli official had declined to comment on the progress being made of the ceasefire negotiations so far. So clearly there's silence on that front.
Trump because he don't.
However, we have heard from Trump in his very lengthy statement that he's put out on Truth Social.
That's what I support.
He's not just talked about or announced a ceasefire. He's also laid out the provisions of it and the timing of it. We saw in the entire post, if we go back to that statement that the US president had put out, that a ceasefire will take effect in less than 6 hours from now, after which Iran will be the first party to put that.
We are living in an age of information warfare, and it is war and diplomacy via Truth Social when it comes to Donald Trump. In the last few moments, the commander-in-chief, the US president, posted that Israel and Iran had agreed to a ceasefire. That happened about an hour ago. This is how it read. It was long. It said, congratulations to everyone. It's been fully agreed by Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. It goes on and on to lay out a convoluted timeline. So the timeline is interesting indeed. If we bring it up on the screen now, it means that there would be a real countdown to the ceasefire. That would mean at around 2 p.m. today, this is Australian time, Australian Eastern time, Iran and Israel would complete final missions. That is ominous. Then by 8 o'clock tonight, the ceasefire to officially begin for 12 hours. Following that, it would mean by 8 a.m. tomorrow, war would be considered over if the ceasefire holds. So there are a lot of caveats in that. It is convoluted, and we are waiting on official confirmation from both Iran and Israel on what the terms are. JD Vance was also on Fox News America. He was pretty positive about it.
I want to know what the terms are too.
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line. But
we got to know what the terms is, because it got to be a give or take. You know what I mean? I can't see them agreeing to a ceasefire without, getting something out the deal. You know what I mean? Even though we know Israel's some stubborn catch, So I wonder what is the give take? What's the deal with it? But, Australia, they want to buy joint. Saying they got a confirmed agreement.
On the Israel-Iran war, the US president has made a major announcement. On his social media post, Donald Trump has said that a ceasefire has been reached between Israel and Iran a short while back. Trump even put out a lengthy post on Truth Social announcing the ceasefire, which will come into effect in less than 6 hours from now. The statement goes on to elaborate on the ceasefire arrangement. Donald Trump says that Iran will be the first to begin the ceasefire for up to 12 hours. At the 12th hour, Israel will also implement ceasefire, after which a completion of 24 hours, the 12-day war will officially come to an end. And while Israel and Iran are yet to officially confirm the acceptance of the ceasefire agreement, a short while back, IRGC sources told WION that Iran's supreme leader had been informed of America's announcement. Reports even reveal that Qatar had played a key role in negotiating the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Officials say that Trump told the Emir of Qatar that Israel had agreed to ceasefire and also asked for Qatari help to persuade Iran to also agree to the deal. In fact, the ceasefire announcement comes within hours of Iran's retaliatory strike that was launched, which targeted US military base in Qatar and Iraq a few hours ago. Iran had carried out Operation Bashar al-Fateh that targeted the Al Udeid US air base in Qatar, which is the biggest American base in the region. There have been no casualties in Iran's strikes in Qatar. In fact, shortly after Iran's retaliation to America's strikes on its nuclear sites, Trump had released a statement calling for peace between Israel and
Tell me where I could look it up.
Within hours, it was the US president himself who was first to announce that a deal has been reached upon between the two warring nations.
And Obama made the deal that let them have the right to have the ballistic missiles and shit and keep enriching. To keep digging. But that was a little minute ago, but I remember that when he did do that, He did give them the right to enrich that shit in the mining and pretty much got us to where we at today with it.
And to discuss all that's been happening in West Asia, especially in the last few hours, we are being joined by John Erith. He is a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation in Washington, D.C. and also been former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. Obviously, fast-paced developments. Your quick thoughts first up on this ceasefire deal that's been agreed upon, because for now there's officially no statement from either of the side on the agreement that's been brokered.
What if this shit's a fake post?
Well, you make a very good point, and obviously if the ceasefire is a real one, it's very good news. But like everyone else, I'm watching very carefully to see the reaction from Iran and from Israel, and to see some confirmation from the governments in Tehran and Jerusalem. I want to see that these governments confirm and state that they will be ceasing any hostilities toward each other before I get very happy about this.
Yes, Mr. Erith, from what it appears, talking of Iran's airstrike on the military base in Qatar of the US, it appears more or less a face-saver move on part of Iran. Do you think that a nuclear deal agreement is a possibility between Iran and US, especially after all that has happened in the last few hours?
I would say that the attack was a symbolic one. The base was the largest U.S. facility in the Middle East. It was one that was in proximity to Iran, and so was one that was of high symbolic value to the Iranian regime, and so it was an obvious target for them. So it was clear that this was a place that was
I can believe you that Truth Social
Iran would want
bullshit.
to strike.
I never looked at
the symbolic value aside, I think the way is now open if the governments involved want to take it for diplomacy, particularly if the ceasefire is real and if it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you think it's peace, there come the hellfires.
Is able to persist.
The U.S. has just crossed one of Iran's red lines. It flew 7 heavy bombers carrying more than 400,000 pounds of explosives across the Atlantic Ocean directly to Iran with the intent of attacking the country's most heavily fortified nuclear facilities. And Donald Trump says it worked.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
What I don't understand is why they facilities was all so close to each other. Why they ain't spread them shits out and make them classified where you don't know where they at? Pardon me eating.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
That assessment is a very early one. The U.S. military says it does not yet know exactly how much damage it caused, except to say it's significant.
Initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
But what we know more about is how the U.S. military says it executed such a complex attack.
Take a look at the facilities up here and over here. Now look. This is gone.
An attack that appears to have caught Iran completely off guard, and for which that country has now promised to make the U.S. pay everlasting consequences.
This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security.
What Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, along with America's top general, Dan Kane, laid out for reporters at a Pentagon press briefing was a plan whose success relied heavily on secrecy.
In and out and back
well.
without the world knowing at all.
At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, Operation Midnight Hammer would begin with a large strike force of B-2 bombers, leaving Whiteman Air Force Base just east of Kansas City, Missouri. This was the first attempt to fool anybody watching.
As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy.
Yes, this mission started with a fake-out, and we can tell, at least anecdotally, this westward flying decoy was noticed. Social media is full of avid military plane spotters, like this one, posting tracking data of what they're seeing in the sky. And as the US military had hoped, much of the focus appeared to be on the planes flying west. The easiest assumption would have been that they were deploying to Guam, Anderson Air Force Base. For Americans, one of the most important forward operating bases west of Hawaii with almost unrestricted airspace. And look at these headlines from just before the attack. U.S. officials revealing to reporters that yes, as Trump mulled over a possible strike, he would indeed be deploying B-2 bombers to the region. Because from Guam, those warplanes could fly to another U.S. base, Diego Garcia, in the heart of the Indian Ocean, and a critical staging ground for...
I almost got stationed at Diego Garcia when I first joined. I picked that shit. The pictures of that shit was so beautiful. Glad I ain't get stationed there. I heard that shit is as big as, like, tiny. I heard that shit is tiny as shit. Nothing to do there.
For military missions.
I didn't even know we still had that base.
Operation Desert Fox in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, even during the Iranian Revolution in the late 70s, Diego Garcia, the island, was seen by the U.S. as a kind of unsinkable aircraft carrier. So flying a set of bombers there might appear like typical U.S. military behavior, especially for this part of the world.
That's a normal military operation for us. And when I saw the news, I wasn't surprised. All of warfare is deception, and that was a brilliant move by the United States, sending the B-2s to Diego Garcia and make it appear that they were going to be stationed there ready and on call, not necessarily waiting to be attacking that night.
So this would have seemed to journalists like a key piece of the puzzle if Donald Trump was indeed seriously considering a bunker-busting strike.
What's so crazy? Go away. You all on camera trying to be a star. Thank you. But like, who the hell does a war strike and then we got full documentaries and shit with people breaking down how our war tactics? I think this shit is a fake out. To keep it real, why would we tell them our plans and how we going? This is a fake out, and this is a way to show other countries like, bitch, you see, we came over there without them even knowing it and shit, and we could strike like the thief in the night, you know?
On Iran's nuclear program. But look one more time at that social media post we showed you a moment ago. This one reply, date-stamped almost exactly 1 hour after those B-2 bombers first took off, but noticing a different set of planes. 9 B-2s heading due east.
The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications.
Now, just for transparency, I actually don't know why someone might have seen 9 bombers heading east when only 7 were part of the so-called strike package.
I'm glad he said
I suppose it's possible the person saw incorrectly, or that 2 of those bombers at some point peeled off. But the official count is 7. 7 of the most advanced stealth bombers in the world, maintaining as much radio silence as they can get away with, as they began what would be an 18-hour journey across the Atlantic. 3 times along the way, according to U.S. officials, this strike group of 7 B-2 bombers had to refuel in midair, something that required dozens of tankers at various aerial refuel points.
The operation...
Listen, newsflash. We refuel in the air all the damn time. That's an everyday thing. We do that with F-18s, with C-2s. We refuel in the air. That's normal. Uh-oh. Find out they done zap me. But they knocked me off. But yeah, air refueling is normal. That's everyday. That's everyday shit. That's regular Navy operations.
Of refueling a B-2 is complex, but it's routine. It's practice.
Yeah, that's
it's
what I'm
rehearsed.
say. It's routine.
It's engineered down to the very last level.
Now, what's interesting is that
It's a fuel
under
probe that come
optimal
out.
conditions,
Yeah, see, they
these
showing it?
bombers are
The
actually
fuel probe
capable
come
of
out,
flying
and they
almost that entire distance without refueling at all. But two things. One, you don't run a high-stakes military mission and risk running out of gas. You never know.
He full of shit. That shit can't fly the whole mission with that, because when you gotta fuel these aircrafts, the weight of it determines how fast you're gonna burn fuel. And if they carrying them heavy ass bombs, they can't have that much weight on it. The weight imbalance is gonna be off. So they can only take but so much fuel. And like them bombers don't have tankers on it. Like other planes we have extra fuel tanks that they can add on to fly more long distance.
For example, if you'll have to divert somewhere unexpectedly. But two, payloads matter. These bombers were burning an incredible amount of fuel, in part because each one was carrying 60,000 pounds of explosive.
I'm beating him to the punch, but you see what I was talking about? Because one thing he wrong is not gonna they can't carry more fuel. It's just gonna burn more fuel because of it's heavy. Same thing like if you got a U-Haul truck and you load it down, it's gonna burn more fuel because it's taking more power to move that truck. Same shit with the aircrafts. It's just more tricky because the landing and takeoffs, you gotta calculate the weight of the planes and the weight of the balance of it, and the pilot gotta know how much the bombs weigh, how much the fuel weigh, any other accessories on it. Those ain't gonna have. They're gonna be pretty slick because it's a stealth bomber. Other like F-18s and stuff, the bombs, the ordnance is gonna be on the outside. But that's a smart bomb though. You could tell it's a smart bomb because of the you can see when it dropped that it's gonna be missile guided. It's gonna be.
That's two 30,000-pound bombs each. Bunker busters intended to penetrate literally hundreds of feet of mountainous rock.
See, like that one that they just shown on there. You go back. Shit, the one that they just showed on the shit. Like this one, this ain't even a real bomb. This one right here, it ain't a real bomb. It's a real bomb, but it's not an active bomb. Like this shit ain't gonna do nothing. This will be a dud. You see, it's a training. The blue stripe is mean training. The yellow stripe is active. Like if you see the one that they dropped out of there, that's active. You see the yellow stripe, I mean that is active. It's an active warhead in it. The blue one is not active. That's training. That's a dud. It might have the rocket in it, but it ain't gonna go boom. It's practice. Cause you don't want to practice with the real thing, cause that's money down the drain. We do practice with the real things, but not all the time. Cause we practice all the time. You practice how you fight how you practice. Or how you train. We don't really fight it.
Each. Bunker busters intended to penetrate literally hundreds of feet of mountainous rock, the only way anyone knows is possible to reach Iran's most heavily protected nuclear facilities from above. But there was more.
At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan.
Every month, this Airbnb pays me in semi-passive income. Now, here's the thing. I don't own it.
Yeah, so this is where the timing and logistics of the mission would become even more complex. And I'll explain how. As those bombers are approaching Iranian airspace, it's nighttime in Iran. Two things are happening. One, the bomber formation is linking up with air support, fighter jets meant to protect and distract, as the entire group heads for 2 Iranian nuclear sites, Natanz and Fordo, where the vast majority of the country's uranium enrichment happens. But timed with their entry into Iran, a U.S. submarine launches cruise missiles, dozens of them, from just off Iran's southern.
You see right there, that little bottleneck right there, that's the Straits of Hormuz that they was talking about shutting off. But if you look right, well, you can't see. I don't know if y'all can see my cursor. Can you see that cursor on the screen? Yeah, y'all can see the cursor on the screen. Like this right here, that's the UAE. It's over this way. This is like Saudi Arabia, but this right here is the Straits that they was talking about cutting it off. That's why I'm like, Iran is up there. They, you know what I mean? We got groups and, you know, stuff all around here that we can, you know, we could counter anything that they do at us.
These are fired early.
That's what I'm saying. Iran is right here. They try to cut this off. So they got it to the west, the east of their country, west from the kingdom of Saudi Arabia and stuff. But we would have the tactical. We would have the tactical advantage, you know? That if they cut this off, we'll be able to still, right here, stop them from cutting it off. Or just trap them in. Trap they fucking military in here. Trap they navy inside of there. And then we got them surrounded by Qatar and the UAE. They know they was outflanked.
Because of their travel time, they are timed to strike Isfahan. That's a 3rd nuclear site immediately after Natanz and Fordo are hit by the bombers, so as to maintain the surprise factor of the main mission.
At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas.
14 bombs at 30,000 pounds each. That's approaching 500,000 pounds of explosives dropped in all. And we can see from satellite imagery what the main attack on Fordo left behind. This is what that nuclear site looked like before the attack. It's buried deep beneath these mountains. And here's what it looked like after. That bluish gray is what experts believe is ash and debris kicked up by the blast. But look particularly at this area here. The before, nothing really unusual about the dirt or the ridges in the mountains. But the after, 2 very clear sets of 3 holes, what are believed to be the exact points at which some of these bunker busters pierced through the earth to reach the hundreds of uranium centrifuges thought to be below. The hole patterns line up with how these bombs are meant to be used on a site like Fordo, which again is built much deeper than a single one of these bombs can actually reach. So the idea is to drop several of them effectively down the same hole, or as close to that as you can get, so that with each successive bomb, you're drilling closer and closer to the target, either just outright destroying it or causing enough structural damage to effectively accomplish the same thing. When all was said and done, all 3 sites had been hit by the bombers and the Tomahawk missiles within a window of about 25 minutes from the first attack to the last. That's a very tight window if you consider the total mission time was more than 30 hours.
I'm not sure what intel analysts are hanging around the Iranian leadership right now, but no one calculated that the United States still had this capacity to leave from an airbase in Missouri and fly to the Middle East and fire up this mission and then fly home.
And according to U.S. officials, American warplanes didn't suffer a single scratch.
We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us.
Man, kind of fucking stupid that you was going at it with Israel and you don't
Right
know
now,
there's a
there
whole
are
fleet of
two
fucking stealth
really
bombers
big
coming
questions. The first is, how does anyone know how much damage was caused when all you can see on the surface is holes?
I wouldn't be surprised if Israel tries to get some commandos there, likely U.S. forces, JSOC, Special Ops, put a small crew and small team together to go try to put their eyes on them themselves, just to see what exactly is going on, to try to, get battle damage assessment. I think that's going to be the most reliable, which is why this whole process is going to take weeks.
I should point out, though, I've also seen reporting suggesting that in the days leading up to the attack, there was unusual truck and vehicular activity at Fordo, 16 cargo trucks along the access road, which, if nothing else, raises the possibility that Iran might have been shuttling nuclear materials out of Fordo in anticipation of the worst. We just don't know. Iran has downplayed the attack, saying the damage was not irreversible, but at the same time swearing it would take revenge.
The Iranians have made very clear that they are prepared to attack U.S. forces and the countries that are basing them if the United States were to get in.
The United States has over 40,000 soldiers in the Middle East, most of whom are in the Gulf and would be at some serious risk if Iran decided to engage them.
They may also be prepared to take action against oil and gas transport infrastructure depots that are either in those countries or transiting the Straits of Hormuz. They could take action to try and close the Straits of Hormuz that would further ensnare the United States into the conflict and run the risk of damaging international trade.
Iran's foreign minister has warned of everlasting consequences, saying Iran reserves all options to defend its sovereignty, interest, and people.
Iran says it fired missiles at an American airport.
Crazy. They said all that is to back down 24 hours later.
Base in Qatar. Qatar says its air defenses intercepted Iran's missile attack.
But so too has the U.S. threatened Iran, because in its view, this was a very limited strike against very specific.
So I'll say this being active duty. They don't know what the fuck they talking about, bro. They ain't no military in their right mind gonna sit out there and say, we did this or we failed at that. We only gonna talk about success. That's the crazy shit. You only gonna talk about success. That's why I'm about to look up their news shit to see what are they news reporting,
Targets. And if Iran were to seek retribution, Donald Trump says the U.S. can and will find other targets to hit.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days.
So the really big question, after more than a week of death and destruction, Israel and Iran locked in a deadly series of missile strikes, is whether the U.S. becoming more directly involved than ever before might just end the war or start a new one.
The United States has joined Israel's war in Iran by attacking 3 Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. U.S. B-2 bombers dropped 14 bunker-buster bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities in Fordo and Natanz. Each bomb weighs 30,000 pounds. They're the largest non-nuclear bombs in the U.S. arsenal. The U.S. Navy also launched 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles from a submarine at the nuclear site in Isfahan. President Trump ordered the attack without seeking congressional approval. He addressed the nation Saturday night.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a
We done heard this shit enough. $33 minutes ago.
Good afternoon, everyone. Trump administration continues to unleash chaos, cruelty, and corruption on the American people. Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans have been a complete and total failure, domestically and internationally. Donald Trump promised that on day one of his presidency, he would end the war in Ukraine. He promised on day one of his presidency, he would free the hostages to bring.
He said he wouldn't start a war, though. This is more Trump delusion syndrome, man. Let's talk about what's going on.
Donald Trump's posture towards Israel's war on Iran is emblematic of how erratic and often incoherent his management style is, foreign policy can be. I mean, when Israel first launched missiles into Iran, we were sitting here at this desk talking to you. Remember that Secretary of State Marco Rubio immediately said, tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Pretty striking statement for Secretary of State. Basically, don't look at us. We're not involved. Leave us out of it. But then Donald Trump turned to his favorite TV network, which was blasting him with war propaganda about how effective Israel's attacks were and how great it would be if the U.S. entered the conflict. So according to the reporting in the New York Times and elsewhere, Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran, at least in part, because he was jealous that Fox News was saying nice things about Benjamin Netanyahu instead of him. We're going to have one of the reporters on that New York Times reporter later this hour. And look, the details here of what actually happened remain maddeningly elusive, I got to say. Maybe the strikes were as successful, and Donald Trump claims, and the sort of infrastructure for a nuclear program in Iran is effectively destroyed. Or maybe they were a complete failure, and everything was moved to other locations, and they did essentially nothing to meaningfully set back Iran's nuclear program, which, according to Donald Trump's own director of national intelligence, was not actively building a bomb, to be clear. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. We don't actually really know where it is on that spectrum. And now, of course, we will, according to the president, have peace forever. Forever. It's never going to have war again, which I guess is a good thing, obviously, if it pans out. But again, you'll forgive me being a little skeptical about what's going to happen next. And critically, one has to add that Congress, whose job it is to authorize use of military force, stated very plainly in the U.S. Constitution, never weighed in. Donald Trump did not get its approval before launching the attacks. A State Department lawyer who served under multiple presidents, including Donald Trump's first administration, called the strikes, quote, patently.
Now they just making up shit to spread propaganda. The Constitution don't say that the president has to go through Congress to get approval for military forces to back. It says that the Constitution has to declare war. That's it. They don't say the other shit that they saying. They just, they making up shit just to,
In the hours following President Trump's announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, one question that comes and still remains tonight after the U.S. attacks in Iran is just how much of Iran's nuclear program is left intact, and also the levels of its enriched uranium. Vice President J.D. Vance was asked about that very matter just a few hours ago.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons-grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the two mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon.
Joining me tonight, Jim Sciutto, CNN's chief national security analyst, and Jeff Zeleny, CNN's chief national affairs correspondent. And Jim Sciutto, on that answer there from Vice President Vance, obviously this was a key question coming out of Saturday night's attack, as the Pentagon said they were still assessing the full extent of the damage. We've certainly heard the president's assessments, including today. I wonder what you made of that answer, though.
Well, listen, I was going to say it's a non-answer. Actually, it was an answer in that he at least did not express confidence that they know where it is, right? He says they believe it to be buried underground, but I know for a fact that the Israelis don't know for sure where the bulk of it is, right? And that is part of their own battle damage assessment, which is still ongoing. The senior Israeli intelligence source told me, and he described it this way. He said, BDA, battle damage assessment, is an art more than a science, and it requires more than satellite photos. It requires human intelligence on the ground, signals intelligence, intercepted communications of Iranian officials talking about what damage took place, etc. And from the Israeli perspective, that's still taking place. They don't have an answer to two questions, really: the extent of damage to the facilities, but also the whereabouts of all of that enriched uranium. And we heard from the podium of the Pentagon just in the last 24 hours that, at least from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that they have not completed their own BDA either. So the fact is, it doesn't appear that they know yet, right, despite the confidence you hear expressed from the president and the vice president. And that will be important in knowing exactly how much damage you've done to the program for the long term.
And Jeff, as far as this ceasefire playing out and what we are watching for so closely over the next few hours, can you just walk us through behind the scenes at the White House, what's been happening there as all of this has been playing out in terms of phone calls and conversations that led up to the president's post tonight?
I mean, Caitlin, an extraordinary day here, but if you think back, really an extraordinary 48 hours or so. It was just 48 hours when the president was announcing to the nation that the strike had been carried out. A day later, he was calling for regime change. And tonight, we're talking about a ceasefire.
Crazy shit is they act like you could literally, like, due to national security, that they could just go on and lay out all the plans and what's going on national TV and YouTube to just be like, yeah, like, this is what we was doing. That's how we did it. Like, that's ridiculous. Ain't nobody gonna do that. That makes no sense whatsoever. You know what I mean? That'd be putting lives in danger, laying out everything we do step by step. They would never do that shit. Never, never, ever, ever. But they was cheering death to America earlier. That's why I really don't know what really changed. What gave them a change of heart?
Now, there's no doubt the White House is keeping a very careful eye on the region tonight. There is a time frame in this agreement that has been worked on throughout the day, really in a series of phone calls, we are told.
What I want to know. I want to know what gave the change of heart. Okay, this one said details revealed.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ingram Angle. I'm Laura Ingram, my angle in moments. But first, tonight, we begin with major breaking news. It's a development that few thought was possible even a few days ago. But with President Trump in charge, we've seen time and time again, the so-called experts are proven wrong. President Trump says Israel and Iran have agreed to a full ceasefire taking effect in just a few hours. In a Truth Social post in the last hour, the president wrote, "Congratulations to everyone. There will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now when Israel and Iran would have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended." On that assumption that everything works out as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina
In just 12 days, President Trump, in coordination with Israel and our
think this
Arab
dude's a
partners,
fucking idiot.
he has totally reshaped the future of the Middle East and the world. The naysayers, the isolationists, were dead wrong. World War III is not happening. Instead, President Trump, he stood up to the worst bully terrorist nation in the entire world and on the planet, and now peace is possible tonight. Thankfully, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been totally defanged. Their nuclear program has been obliterated. Their scientists are dead. Their top generals, many of them, are dead. Most of their missile systems have been destroyed. Their proxies are in tatters, and the so-called elite Revolutionary Guard, they have been ripped to shreds, with more top generals being killed by the Israelis. And after all of that, Iran is all of a sudden now ready to come to the table because they have no leverage at all whatsoever. This is what peace through strength, the Trump doctrine, actually looks like. Can this be a lasting peace? I can't give you that answer tonight. Only time will tell. Now, of course, it is possible, as the Iranian regime, they may simply be trying to buy time so they can rearm. The devil will be in the details of a final deal, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and our Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff, they are now in the process of hammering these issues out. Any deal obviously would insist on any place, anywhere, anytime inspections. The Iranians need to stop providing money and weaponry to all of their proxies. That means Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad. That would be the militias in Syria, the militia in Iraq, and that would be the Houthi rebels. And frankly, they should recognize Israel's right to exist once and for all if we want a real and lasting peace. Or we will have to assume they simply want to build out a bigger, more lethal ballistic missile system. Remember, they have ballistic.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Raul. I'm trying to find something where Israel and Iran say that they agreed to a ceasefire and not just some fucking tweak, you know? I want to hear them say they agreed to it. You know what I mean? That's the proof I'm looking for.
Ballistic missiles now at 2,000 pounds. They're looking and aiming to go to 4,000 pounds, and they are firing those missiles into heavily populated areas. The fact that we can even discuss this tonight is only because of President Donald J. Trump. This is what Obama and Biden could and never would do with their policies of appeasement.
And this boy pussy popping hard for Trump, boy. Biden is out of office. Let it go. He is pussy popping hard for him, man. He twerking on the dick for it.
Remember, that included bribing the Iranians with billions of dollars in cash and other currency being flown into Iran for the mullahs of Iran in cargo planes. And in the case of Joe Biden not enforcing Donald Trump's sanctions that were bankrupting the Republic of Iran, their feckless diplomacy, their appeasement policies allowed the mullahs of Iran to get within weeks of a nuclear weapon. It allowed them to build out their weaponry and foment terror all throughout the region and the world and kill Americans. And, of course, they developed these facilities with all that money deep underground, including the Fordow nuclear site that took years to build deep under this mountain that, of course, is now obliterated. But tonight, one thing is clear to the entire world. The technology, the logistics, the skill of the U.S. military is unmatched. No other country comes close. After decades of being jerked around by and threatened by the Iranians, it took just a mere few hours for the USA to obliterate their nuclear ambitions. Over the weekend, 9 B-2 stealth bombers launched from Missouri. 2 were decoys that flew west. 7 others flew east over the Atlantic. And, of course, these bombers were refueled midair, ultimately entered Iran's airspace completely undetected. And according to my sources, the U.S. was even able to trigger false alerts and coordinates on Iran's air defense systems, causing them to shoot at what they thought were planes, but was absolutely nothing in the sky.
All this a little propaganda. We boosting it up, and they ain't even agreed to none of this, you know? What if that's the case? This is the spin game we putting out there. Bring them out in the open and then
Incredible, misdirection on the part of our military. The bombers then dropped, as Jennifer Griffin said, 14 massive bunker buster bombs, while a single submarine hundreds of miles away was able to deliver a payload of 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Deflection precision.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ingram Angle.
Let's see if we can find something where I see where a prison was hit.
I've been to Al Udeid in the past before and seen this huge control room where drones, aircraft are monitored and controlled. And it's possible that the attacks against Iran were orchestrated from here. We know that President Trump and the National Security Council are due to meet. They're also acutely aware of these threats. Our colleague Kira Phillips quoting a defense official saying that they don't behave like this unless the threat itself is credible. We had multiple threats, multiple warnings from Iran that they would indeed retaliate to the US strikes on 3 nuclear facilities. The latest one came from the Iranian president probably only about 40 or 45 minutes ago. He's not a key decision maker. The Ayatollah is in normal circumstances, but these are abnormal circumstances. But again, warning that there would be retaliation. Remember, President Trump and Defense Secretary Hegseth have made it very clear that if there is any kind of retaliation from Iran, that would lead to an even greater response from the United States. But there is precedent here. Remember the former head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Soleimani. He was assassinated back in 2020 under the first President Trump's first term in office. I was in northern Iraq when Iran responded. They fired at U.S. bases near where we were in Erbil in the north of the country. They fired at U.S. bases elsewhere in the country and on the border near Syria as well. So they have form, if you like. Now, that was a calibrated response. It was one for Iran to say, look, we did respond, but no further. It allowed for a de-escalation. I'm not sure we're in the same territory right now, especially given the very specific threats that the President Trump has made against any of what would happen in the eventuality of any retaliation. But the facts are, there was this threat, there was airspace was closed, and the Israelis also monitoring the situation. There are reports, we have a colleague whose sister lives in Doha, reports of hearing explosions, but we're in this very foggy situation at the moment, and we just need to take a breath and look at what possibly could have happened and wait until we get facts issued from the Pentagon and from the White House and potentially from Qatari officials. Sorry, just one other thing worth adding, of course. You know, these bases have sophisticated air defense of their own, but Qatar also has sophisticated air defense. It has the US Patriot and THAAD missile systems, some of which are being used here in Israel as Iran attacks. So it's possible when people say they've heard explosions that these are intercepts. So at the moment, I think we just need to take our time, deep breath time, and wait and see exactly what's happened.
And Ian, it does sound like the Iranians are...
It's got more heart to me just to be standing out there to get their point of view on this shit in the middle of a war zone.
Now calling this operation Annunciation of Victory. I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, for a little bit more on the reaction here. We're also seeing some video from inside Doha. Rachel, what are you watching for in terms of reaction from the U.S., particularly with what we've heard from the president this morning?
Well, Diane, I just left the West Wing. I spoke to a senior administration official who told me that the White House, the Department of Defense, they are aware of and they are closely monitoring any potential threats to U.S. troops, even including Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. We know that's an air base that the president did visit back in May on his first foreign trip to the Middle East. It comes, as Ian was saying, amid these warnings from President Trump himself, but also key members of his administration about any potential retaliation. The president saying directly if future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. The president saying any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with far greater than what was witnessed on that initial night that they did strike. We know right now the president, per his public schedule, is meeting with his national security team in the Oval Office. We have watched members of his national security team, including the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, make their way into the West Wing as we anticipate more from the White House and this administration on their reaction and on next possible steps, as the president has warned.
And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, you were actually at this very base just over a month ago when President Trump went to visit. This is a critical base for several U.S. operations in the past and expected to be in the future. What do you make of this, Iran now announcing that they're attacking it?
And it is the largest U.S. airbase in the region, obviously positioned critically. And the president was there just a few weeks ago on May 15th. I was there. This was during his first big foreign trip, his first trip in the Middle East as well. And at the time, it was interesting, the president speaking to thousands of U.S. troops there. And at the time, he said that it was his priority to end conflicts, not start them. But he added in those remarks that he will not hesitate to wield American power if it is necessary.
Wow. I don't know how true this is. They saying Iran.
If you want to go from looking like this to looking like this,
ceasefire,
you're going to need to do a lot of this. And if you want to survive doing all of that,
I don't know how true that shit is. Yeah, 20% not happy with the ceasefire. Right, they think war, just because you need war or to show of force, the fear of going to war, that don't mean that you actually want to go to war, man. You're gonna lose. You gotta lose to win in a war. And I don't know if this is true. See, you just type in Iran. See what comes up. Ceasefire. That's the only one saying that they denied the ceasefire. I think they just wanted to launch their attacks to show that they respond and then, you know, take their L after that, you know. Oh, they are saying
All right, we have breaking news that's coming in. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says there is no agreement on any ceasefire cessation of military operations. Through a post on social media, Araghchi, however, added that if the Israeli regime stops what he called its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, Iran will continue its response afterwards as well. This is the latest that we're getting right now. It's 4:33 a.m. in Tehran. He further said that the final decision on the cessation of military operations will be made later. So this is the latest that we're getting right now after Trump announced on social media the complete and total ceasefire, saying that all sides have agreed to this. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi said that there is no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of hostilities or military operations. Araghchi, however, added that if the Israeli regime stops what he has called its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, Iran will not continue its response afterwards. So it's conditional at this point. What happens in the next few hours is going to be very crucial. He further said that the final decision on the cessation of military operations will be made later.
Y'all see that on the screen. the foreign minister says that as of now, there is no ceasefire. So did the president lie to the American people or what? As Iran has repeatedly made clear, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. As of now, there is no agreement on any ceasefire. That's some bold statements right there. Or assertion of any military operations however provide that Israel regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. We have no intention to continue a response afterwards. Yeah, they got a different way of life for sure. And a lot of people don't understand that outside of the US, they suppress a lot of the speech. You don't have the freedom to speak up against your government in these other countries. Even some of our allies, you can't speak up against their government. That's wild.
We know Donald Trump has said that there is a complete cessation of hostilities and a ceasefire. He's proposed a phased plan here for a ceasefire. He elaborated on how the ceasefire arrangement, in that Iran will be the first to begin the ceasefire for up to 12 hours. It would be at the 12th hour then that Israel would implement the ceasefire as well. And after a completion of 24 hours, this war will officially come to an end. This was Trump's statement. Now we're hearing from Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who is saying that there is no agreement on any ceasefire.
You got a point there. You do got a point there. You got a point. They are doing that same shit right here in this country.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can.
Skip this shit. Trying to force me to buy the premium.
Now, Donald Trump has announced that Iran and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire.
Now, the phased ceasefire would bring about an official end to the 12-day war. The U.S. president later told U.S. media that he thinks the ceasefire is unlimited and it is going to go forever.
A senior White House official said that Israel agreed to the ceasefire deal on the condition that Iran stop
with Erdogan, the president of Turkey, on a grain corridor.
That Putin threatened the end of the war?
Last week, Mr. Erdogan called for a peace summit in Turkey. Mr. Zelensky immediately agreed. Mr. Trump said that if Putin goes, I will come. We received a message from the Kremlin that the conditions for this have not yet matured. In this regard, I would like to ask you, do you give the leaders an important role in resolving this issue? And what conditions should be met so that the leaders can come together and put an end to this conflict? Thank you very much.
Putin trying to end a war. He's still
As for President
against
Trump's
fucking
statement, I heard it in a different way. Mr. Trump said that Putin is not going because I am not going. What is he supposed to do when I am not there? And he is right. In this sense, he is absolutely right. Secondly, he has repeatedly said that if I were president, there would be no war. I think he is right here too. I will tell you why. In one of my last phone conversations with Mr. Biden, I told him that I will not go into details now, of course. We have recorded conversations on this. I told him that there is no need to bring hot conflicts to a head. We need to resolve everything peacefully, and we must force the current leadership of Ukraine to meet the demands of its citizens living in the southeast to put an end to the genocide of the Russian-speaking population to stop violating human rights, as the previous Human Rights Administration has always said. By the way, I told him then, it seems to you that everything will be resolved so easily now, but it may take some time, and it would be better not to do what you are pushing the situation towards. I told him this, Mr. Biden.
They said blah, 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 blah.
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's get into more of these top headlines. We do have some breaking news. Remember, I was referring to the fact that we're waiting for Israeli and Iranian confirmation of that very ceasefire the president announced here. I want to put this up from the foreign minister of Iran, Araghchi, there, saying, as Iran has repeatedly made clear, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. He says, as of now, there is no agreement, in quotations, on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. However, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. He says the final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later. So the Iranian foreign minister saying no agreement with Israel. We'll see on whether or not that changes. In the meantime, here, I want to bring into my conversation our friend and colleague there, Connor Hansen in New York, with the latest. Connor, good to see you here. Everyone's talking about this ceasefire announced by President Trump. What more do we know?
Hi, Andrew. Well, that's right. You said it. Very interesting comments from Iran's foreign minister. But President Trump, as we know, said Israel and Iran have fully agreed to a ceasefire, ending what he's now calling the 12-day war. The news came just hours, of course, after Iran tried to retaliate against the U.S. for its strikes on the country's nuclear program. Announcing a ceasefire on social media, President Trump wrote, quote, this is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America. And God bless the world.
The president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region.
Earlier in the day, Iranian missiles could be seen being blown up in the sky above Qatar. The president says no one was hurt and there was hardly any damage at the El Udeid military base. Gulf nations like...
What country you in East Africa? I think maybe they did have the agreement and something fell through, and now we gotta see where it go from there.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE condemned Iran's strike on the U.S. base. The U.S. expected retaliation after bombing 3 of Iran's nuclear sites. New footage released by the Air Force shows the B-2 bombers used in that mission. Before the ceasefire announcement, Israel said it carried out its most extensive airstrikes on Iran.
When you understand the enormous war machine that was built on the Iranian nuclear program by Iran, you understand what an enormous risk it is to the world.
President Trump made his announcement around 6 p.m. Eastern time, of course, right in the middle of the night over in the Middle East, saying the ceasefire would take effect 6 hours later. Their hope is in about 24 hours or at some point tomorrow, this war will be completely over. Andrew?
I think it's going to be
Connor
over
Hansen there live for us in New York. Connor,
hours.
always good to see you. Talk soon.
We're going to have part 2.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, in the meantime here, do want to get in what we just brought to you about 5 minutes ago, this post by the Iranian foreign minister on X, Abbas Araghchi, saying this, as Iran has repeatedly made clear, he says, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. He says, as of now, there is no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. He says, however, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. The final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later. Now, moments ago, there's a follow-up. He said this, that the military operations of our powerful armed forces to punish Israel for its aggression continued until the very last minute at 4 a.m. He says, together with all Iranians, I thank our brave armed forces who remain ready to defend our dear country until their last drop of blood there. So I think it got cut off, but you get the gist of it. It says that we're getting confirmation from the Iranian foreign minister that the ceasefire, at least from their side, seemingly in effect. In the meantime, though, we do want to bring into the conversation right now my friend and colleague, Iranian-American journalist, Alina Shirazi. She joins me. Alina, so good of you to be with us here. We're going to get in on, I kind of previewed with our viewers, the perspective of everyday Iranians. You've been in touch with so many of them about how they are feeling right now. With this news today, that is breaking still, very fluid, about the ceasefire announced by President Trump between Iran and Israel. Have you heard any reaction from on the ground in Iran? A sigh of relief? Still uncertainty? What about it?
Andrew, thanks so much for having me. I mean, it's really a mixed bag here. I mean, right now you heard from the foreign minister of Iran saying not officially a ceasefire, but it basically is one. So a little bit of mixed messaging there. But really what I'm hearing from Iranians so far is we are not being, rained down with bombs and missiles, so they feel a little bit of a relief there. But for them, the strikes have stopped, but the terror continues with the regime, with the Iranian government. And so there was a little bit of hope that, from what I'm hearing from Iranians, there might have been, at the end of the day, a sort of light at the end of the tunnel for them, something to gain from all of this bloodshed, from all of this war. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of Iranian Americans, the diaspora, a lot of Iranians inside the country saying, well, what was this all for? I've always said, and foreign policy analysts have also said that countries don't have friends, they have interests. And so you're kind of seeing this with, of course, the president trying to defend national security and make sure that Iran's nuclear sites have been practically decimated so they won't have the enriched uranium. That was their goal. Andrew, I know that I'm sure you saw President Trump also post on Truth Social, essentially saying that he hopes, make America great again, make Iran great again, make Iran great again, rather. So there was that sense of, will there be a sort of, boost for the Iranian people? Will the regime, is there a light at the end of the tunnel for the people? Just really a mixed bag of emotions right now is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because I've been asking some of our experts throughout the last week.
They're reading up on it. They saying an hour after the deadline that Iran had launched missiles towards Jerusalem that was intercepted. So they got all their peoples in bomb shelters waiting. So they trying to see by midnight. So they got another 45 minutes to see if they going to actually come to a ceasefire or not. So still time to keep hope alive.
There was this somewhat, in my view, false conventional wisdom forming that, in the wake of Israel's strikes preemptively on the country of Iran, that your everyday Iranians, your rank and file, would just kind of organically rise up against the regime. We have not seen that at all. I do want to show some of the messages you have received, though. We're going to show some of them to our audience here, and I'm going to do my best to read them and kind of prompt you, Alina. So we have this one here. I'm going to read it. This individual, we're not going to name them, they're going to remain anonymous, says this to you in a text message, that even now ordinary Iranians, those who reject the regime, can be heard nightly shouting death to Khamenei from their rooftops, echoing the same defiance seen during the Woman Life Freedom protests when crowds chanted, "Our enemy is right here, they lie when they say it's America." So this kind of gives a sense of the feeling. We don't even know. I mean, the president says he knows where Ayatollah Khamenei is. There's some reporting out there to suggest he's hunkered down in his bunker. Haven't heard from him since the ceasefire was announced earlier today. But that's just a sense of how some Iranians are feeling, that they want the Ayatollah gone. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just look at the facts, over 200 women have been executed in Iran since 2007. And so there's no question it is a brutal and oppressive regime, as told to me by Iranians who are inside the country. And I was with you last for the Mahsa Amini protest, the Freedom Life movement, where we thought we
pushing feminism.
News Nation's Brian Enton, where the Iranian missiles targeted U.S. bases. We start with Robert Sherman in Tel Aviv. To Sherman in just a second. Enton in Qatar, Doha. Brian, sun's about to come up. Give us the feel in the city when you landed
to the
and as
ceasefire. They got
the
a
missiles
count.
were incoming.
We got a telethon for this shit now.
Yeah, we were the last plane to get in, Leland, before they closed the airspace here. There was a feeling that something was about to happen.
Qatar looked nice,
State Department had told American citizens to shelter in place, and then just about an hour later, when we were on the ground, suddenly the missiles were flying just in the skies behind me. The U.S. airbase you were talking about is just about 20 miles or so behind me. Thankfully, no American men or women were hurt there. There were 19 missiles that the Iranians shot at the base. 18 were intercepted, 1 landed, but there was no serious damage. I want to get to this, though, Leland, because people here are cautiously optimistic that there could be a ceasefire. There's this feeling that the mood is sort of lightening. But the Iran foreign minister just put out this statement. I want to read it to you. It says, as of now, there is no agreement or on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. However, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. The final decision on cessation of our military operations will be made after. So it sort of in a way saying, yes, there will eventually be a ceasefire. It's kind of like a 50-50 statement in my mind, but not going as far as what President Trump said, that now suddenly we have peace in the region. Leland?
Yeah, the Iranians are trying to posture. I think that's fair. So far, no reports of new missile attacks in Israel, at least from the Iranian side. Brian, stay with us for the next couple of hours. Obviously, we'll check back in with you as news develops in the region. Robert Sherman now in Tel Aviv as the sun is about to come up there. Robert, I can imagine, having been there, there is a sense at least of optimism that there might be a ceasefire here coming up.
Yeah, definitely, Leland. And I think that one thing to underscore, though, is that the statement that you gave off the top is that the hours before a ceasefire come to an end can at times be the most active. And if you read the president's statement there, he even
Miss
acknowledged
Sophia,
that in these
and
hours
God bless you, and hopefully
operations underway.
Shit'll get better where you at. Appreciate you tuning in.
Here on the ground, there's a statement from the president there in approximately 6 hours from now.
Said, thank you for tuning in, Miss Sophia. God bless you. Hopefully everything goes fair on your end. CJ, yeah, they bugging out for the last couple of hours, I see.
When Israel and Iran have wound down and
completed
it's
past
their
that time, though.
final missions. This is what we are seeing right now. Just a short while ago, the Israelis intercepted a series of drones. One was over the Golan Heights in Israeli airspace. 3 others were about to cross into Israeli airspace. So there were sirens that were activated in that direction there. We have also heard the rumbling of jets overhead, and the Israelis have announced a new series of evacuation orders in Tehran
could do is
itself,
hope
given
for
the
peace,
indication
right? We can
that
hope
there are
that
more
is
strikes
true.
that they want to make.
I don't think that is delusional. I just don't know how long it'll last.
Evacuation orders for Tel Aviv as well in the last couple of hours. So everyone has given the indication that there could be more activity here. But something that the Israelis have emphasized is so important to them
years in the making.
Before they subside any operations against Iran, they want to knock out these ballistic missile sites. The nuclear operations, they believe, have been taken care of by the Americans, but the ballistic missiles still pose a threat to them. That is why you are seeing these evacuation orders coming down in Tehran. That is why you have seen the Israeli Air Force working feverishly today in order to disable those ballistic missile capabilities. Leland?
Yeah, we do.
Seemed as
all
though
over.
The Israelis wanted a few more days. The reporting I have is that Benjamin Netanyahu was certainly pressured significantly by President Trump for this, wanted this done before he left for NATO. Robert, back to you. If the sirens go off, as you can see down a countdown there, by our clock, based on when the president put the statement out, the ceasefire would take effect at midnight Eastern time.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you
Yeah, so that's 40 minutes from now.
will get fact.
40 minutes from now, y'all think that they gonna come to some type of resolution in 40 minutes? I don't know. I think that's kinda think that's kind of, wishful thinking. I want to sue Iran. Iran. Nah, I don't trust Iran. Well, I don't trust none of their words. Let's see, Iran. Yeah, I don't trust none of their words. It don't even it don't even gotta be talking about this. They've been lying about shit this whole time. So it's no, you know what I mean? I don't see what's different now. Trump talk about they fully agreed. It don't sound like they fully agree. It was a cool headline. And I don't see what Israel say yet. Israel ain't respond yet to say.
This potential ceasefire between Israel and Iran has come about in the last few hours. Is that surprising to you?
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Thanks for having me, Mel. Yes, it's very surprising because only a few hours ago, Iran launched retaliatory attack on the U.S. base in Qatar, and before that, President Trump was talking about regime change in Iran. Now, all of a sudden, Trump is talking about ceasefire. This is surprising, but it could be an opportunity for Iran to save face, because earlier Trump was asking Iran for an unconditional surrender. Now he's talking about a ceasefire and end to the conflict. So this could be an off-ramp for Iran to take and save face and not admit that it's been defeated.
We've just seen moments ago a statement from the Iranian foreign minister that no agreement has been made right at the moment. But what do you make of this possible ceasefire sort of coming about hours after the Iranian attacks on the US base in Qatar and from that statement from the Iranian foreign minister?
Well, as we speak, there are aerial attacks on Iran, and there are reports of explosions in Tehran and anti-air fire. So Iran feels that it continues to be under attack. From the Iranian point of view, given that Iran did not start the war, given that Israel launched the attack about 10 days ago to torpedo the discussions between Iran and the United States over Iran's nuclear program, from the Iranian point of view, an end to the conflict would be welcome, but Iran cannot admit that it's been defeated. So that's why we see the foreign minister from Iran saying the terms are not acceptable because the terms of the ceasefire actually asks Iran to stop firing against Israel and giving Israel about 6 hours or so before they stop firing. So the terms seems to favor Israel, and that's why the foreign minister is signaling that they wouldn't accept capitulation.
You've been watching Iranian TV this morning. It's still, of course, very early in the morning there, but how is this war being reported at the moment?
Well, the war is actually playing very much going according to the Iranian narrative of the United States being a global bully and a hegemon, trying to, muscle its way into the Middle East and imposing its will on the people of the Middle East, especially the Iranian people. So the Iranian narrative of revolution, standing up against the United States, this narrative of resistance against Israel is being repeated over and over again. And that's how it's being depicted.
What do you think is happening behind the scenes? We've been hearing reports of back-channel negotiations taking place. What do you think is happening there?
Well, it's almost impossible to know what's happening behind the scene, but what I think is very certain is that from the Iranian perspective, this has hardened their resolve to pursue a hardline approach in relation to Israel and in relation to the United States, that there is little stock, they put little stock in negotiation and reform in relation to Iran's domestic or international policy. So I think this is probably a big blow to the reform movement in Iran. And we've already heard that Iran is contemplating exiting NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we have heard talks of Iran developing its own nuclear weapon. So there is now more incentive for Iran to actually
God bless America.
turn
Hopefully we
towards a
able
nuclear
to
bomb. So this would be a big
get
a blow to the Israeli agenda and the U.S. agenda, because they started this war to prevent Iran from building
try to stay
a
on
nuclear
and see
bomb.
do they make it
and
to
now
midnight.
Iranians are
I got
openly
work in the
discussing
morning,
it.
but I'm gonna see if they
We
gonna
have
make
been
it to
seeing
midnight.
reports overnight of Israel widening its attacks beyond potential nuclear sites. What do you make of that approach?
Well, Israel is showing that it can hit any target it wishes to. It's a show of might. Israel has a commitment, effectively, to regime change in Iran, especially under Netanyahu's leadership. Israel sees Iran leadership as an existential threat. It has been pursuing that line, and I only expect that Israelis would continue pounding Iranian targets and undermining the regime's stability.
So where does this leave the Iranian regime at the moment, do you think?
Well, as I mentioned, I think we see a hardened resolve among the hardliners to resist, using their terminology, American pressure, Israeli pressure, perhaps explore the nuclear weapon option and exiting NPT. That's very sad for the Iranian population, because there were hopes of reconciliation. The talks between Iran and the United States prior to the Israeli attack were raising hopes that Iran could come out of isolation and life could be returned to normal a bit. But now we have gone back.
Donald Trump has posted on his Truth Social site that Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. The announcement comes hours after Qatar says it successfully intercepted a barrage of Iranian missiles fired on a U.S. military base there. And Tehran says it matched the number of bombs dropped by the U.S. on Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. Qatari authorities say there were no casualties in the attack.
Iran released this video footage purporting to show the retaliatory rockets launched towards Qatar. And this message from a military spokesman.
This is not just a pipeline. It connects two Israeli cities, but what's so interesting about it is that it used to be known as the Israeli-Iranian pipeline in the 1970s, because the two states worked on it together to transport crude oil through Israel to Europe. But that is a thing of the past.
این غده سرطانی از هنگام آغاز مرحله‌ای رشد کرده.
We'll go over this another day.
He pledged, quote,
We'll go over that another day. Let me see. Watching. English, so we ain't gonna. Can I get a mega?
If you want to get your name, phone number, and address off the internet, but want to handle the removals yourself,
This look like some loops. This don't even look like some real shit. This look like Proton TV. What's going on? What up, though? Yeah, man. I don't know why. I don't know why. I can't even see my chat on the screen for fucking this joint. Oh, what's up? Oh, this was getting intercepted.
There has been confusion over a possible ceasefire agreement between Iran and Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump announced, quote, a complete and total ceasefire between the two countries on his social media platform, Truth Social. But in the past hour, there have been more strikes on Israel with at least 3 people killed. That's it from me. Mali Inside News continues here after Reframe.
They still been doing attacks. And they got at least 3 that died, so that right there is telling you it ain't gonna be no real. Those gonna have to be some hard negotiation because they attacked Israel and they saying they at least got 3 died. I mean, that don't even sound. It's probably way more than 3 that got caught up in that. Not confirmed yet to see, so yeah, it's probably more than that. More than that is probably explosions and evacuations. Yeah, man, I'm trying to stay on here long enough to see what's going to happen at midnight when that's supposed to be the cutoff for hostilities. It's supposed to be midnight. So I don't know how true that is and how that's going to come to be. Because as you can see, it look like they've been they still going at it with each other. Let's see what they saying in Jerusalem.
It could cost you up to $8,000 to fix a transmission, or up to $10,000 to fix your engine, or up to $2,500 to get your...
Look very peaceful this early morning. It is looking peaceful. That could be a sign of good that it's looking kind of peaceful over in Jerusalem right now. hopefully that's a sign of things coming to a better start, you know. I'm gonna give it another 25 minutes and then we gonna call it a wrap, you know. Let me find a goodie. We can find a good breakdown of this that can last us for the next 25 minutes. And we could get into that. Let's get to it. This is just showing them. Putin talking out his ass just to talk out his asses. War train. I don't know. What do y'all think is going to take to get an official stop to all of this madness? I think it's going to take more than a tweet. You know what I mean? It's going to have to take more than that. It's going to take, it got to take more than that. You can't just, a tweet ain't going to suffice. Like, they going to have to come and sit at the table and work out some real shit, not just maybe that was from earlier. Let me see news. Let's check the top news. Top stories from the war room. Iran missile attacks on. We already know that. We went over that. Deportation. Really just more of the same. Nothing, no real news that came out in the last hour since they announced, you know. Just more about the Chuck Schumacher. I want to hear what they got to say over there. I want to see their news, you know. I don't want to hear our news. I want to hear their news, you know. And see if they agreeing to this, because right
Video
now
out of Iran launching a missile attack at a U.S. military base in Qatar hours ago. The missiles did not reach the base or any major city. Instead, they were intercepted by an air defense system.
And meanwhile, breaking within the last hour, President Donald Trump says Israel and Iran have agreed to complete and total ceasefire that will be phased over the next 24 hours.
Big news. The announcement coming on Truth Social just hours after Iran launched a retaliatory attack against the U.S., bombing 3 of Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend.
Fox 41's Matt Morrow is here tracking the very latest. He joins us live from the breaking news desk with what we're just learning. Matt.
Oh, there is a lot going on here, Talia and Jeremy. Here's the latest on Iran's air assault. This was aimed at the largest U.S. base in the Middle East, the Al Udeid Air Base. We're now learning there have been no reports of anyone getting hurt or killed or any significant damage, either on the base or in other parts of Qatar. The U.S. says air defense systems intercepted 13 missiles. Some of that could be seen by people on the ground in the capital of Doha. We also know Iran warned Qatar this base in particular because it's away from populated areas. This leads to what the president just posted on Truth Social a few moments ago, that Iran is trying not to provoke the United States into a larger conflict and is ready to de-escalate some of the tensions in the Middle East. Now to this, and new at 5, we're hearing from President Donald Trump. This is for the first time since Iran's retaliatory strikes. The president posted on social media earlier saying, quote, "Most importantly, they have gotten it all out of their system and there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region. I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Again, the president posting shortly after that Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. And just a few moments ago, the New York Times reported that Israel is not commenting on this idea of a ceasefire. Meanwhile, also new at 5, we're seeing how people on the ground in Qatar reacted when they saw the Iranian missiles getting intercepted. Take a look at this.
Oh my goodness gracious. Like that. And I see explosions in the sky there.
So in summary today, Iran had some retaliatory strikes that went over to a U.S. airbase in Qatar. None of those hit the ground. No one was hurt right there. Shortly afterward, President Donald Trump says there is a ceasefire. We are still waiting for Israel and Iran to officially agree to that and talk about that. We'll have updates for you as they come in. You can always get the latest, too, at KDVR.com.
This surprise announcement, Paul, came just hours after Iran launched a direct attack on U.S. forces.
Yeah, what a whirlwind tonight, Adrian. Just as the world wondered whether this was about to spiral into a much broader, bloodier conflict. Indeed, the U.S. president, as he does, dropped word on his Truth Social platform, effectively that it's all over. A ceasefire, and within hours, a full end to the war, although tonight, a complication. Reports late this evening from Iran's state news agency, there's no deal if Israel doesn't comply. There's a lot to unpack here, but why don't we begin with Donald Trump's post?
Here's what dropped just after 6 p.m. Eastern. Congratulations to everyone, he writes. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire beginning in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions. After 12 hours, he continues, the war will be considered ended. The official end, he says, comes around 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. Said Trump tonight. Separately, he expects this to last, quote, forever, calling it a wonderful day for the world. All of this just hours after Iran retaliated for that massive strike by U.S. forces on Iranian nuclear facilities early Sunday. Multiple rockets fired from Iran said to target the giant U.S. military base outside Doha, Qatar. Sorry. But these images underline Iran's response, ferocious as it seemed, was in fact tepid. Here, anti-missile defense systems intercepting all but one of the Iranian missiles. Trump calling Iran's retaliation weak and noted Iran itself had given a heads up the missiles were en route. Trump even thanking Iran for doing so. Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, was on Fox News tonight speaking to that.
That's what make it sound so phony that I'm gonna give you a heads up that I'm gonna attack you. That's on something like let me slap you so I can look good. Nah, you can't slap me. Let me swing and you weave it so it could look like I try to fight back. I agree to that. To continue, we need you to confirm What the hell happened? Somebody try to attack my stream? Somebody try to hack my stream while I'm on here. You want to send this shit? Resend it. I ain't get the message. There it go. Yes, it's me. Somebody try to hack. They try to hack my stream live while I'm on here. while I'm on air. Ain't that some shit? Live while I'm on here talking to y'all, they try to hack my stream that YouTube just hit me up. That's crazy. That's unbelievable right there. I can't believe that somebody tried to do. Shame on you, because you probably was watching right now. You know what I mean? Y'all trying to get in there. I already had to change my password and shit before because somebody tried to get up in there. Pause. Yeah, man. I wonder my subscribers just dropped off from watching just now, because I'm like, how the hell they just bland me like that? But let's get back to the content.
That, underlining again the U.S. imperative that Iran not ever be in a position to build nuclear weapons. That was the stated goal of Trump in all of this, and per J.D. Vance, it remains so. Here's a clip.
But here's the question. If Iran is desperate to build a nuclear weapon in the future, then they're going to have to deal with a very, very powerful American military again. Our hope is that the lesson that the Iranians have learned here is, look, we can fly a bunker buster bomb from Missouri to Iran completely undetected without landing once on the ground, and we can destroy whatever nuclear capacity you build up. I think that lesson is what's going to teach them not to rebuild their nuclear capacity.
Vance adding, Adrian, the world is now at a different place than it was a week ago, and he may well be right on that.
So, Paul, what else do we know about exactly how the deal came about?
Well, setting aside Iran's late word that this is...
I don't know shit, because let them tell it ain't no deal. We trying to figure it out.
The deal only if Israel complies. We do know it seems to have all come together just this afternoon. There's reporting it was brokered by the Qatari prime minister, and further reporting, quoting a diplomat briefed on the talks, that Donald Trump put J.D. Vance on it and that he played a role. But beyond that, it gets murky, at least for now. This is all playing out, Adrian, even as we speak.
Indeed it is. All right, thanks for that. That's Paul Hunter in Washington. So let's go to the region now. Chris Brown is in Jerusalem. So, Chris, Trump's announcement was very vague about when the ceasefire was supposed to kick in.
Well, his post about that ceasefire came right as both Israel and Iran were actually in the middle of attacking each other. Israel had planes in the air, was really pounding targets in Tehran, and Iran had drones over the northern Golan Heights. This had already been one of the most violent days of this war, even before Iran launched those missiles at the base in Qatar. There had been heavy strikes during the day in Tehran, and notably many of them were on regime institutions, including the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard and a prison that is infamous for detaining opponents of the government and torturing them. Iran also sent a couple of waves of ballistic missiles to Israel as well and spread them out over the length of the country as if to try to cause as much inconvenience as possible. Israel says it manages to intercept about 90% of Iran's missiles, but those that hit, Adrian, do cause a lot of damage.
And so all that, Chris, just, adds to the confusing signals, it seems, about whether a ceasefire was really even possible.
Very much so. We have not heard directly from Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, in days, but his officials had been saying right up until Trump's post that Iran would not negotiate anything while Israel was attacking. And Israel had been demanding that Iran stop its missile launches. Benjamin Netanyahu has been signaling all weekend that Israel is close to meeting its war goals, essentially ensuring that Iran could not build back its...
I wonder if he's the puppet master. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people feel like he's the puppet master, that he the one that got us in this situation right now. Do you think there's any truth to that? That he's the puppet master, or we just backing up our allies like good, you know what I mean? Like good allies. What y'all think?
nuclear program nor its ballistic missile capabilities. And these attacks on the regime targets in particular that we saw earlier seem designed to send a message to Iran that it could not afford a long war of attrition with Israel and would pay a heavy cost as long as it continued to fight. Adrian.
All right, thank you. That's Chris Brown in Jerusalem tonight.
This is a very delicate situation in terms of what is actually going to stop and what are going to be the arrangements and what's going to happen if there's any type of violation or perceived violation. One of the questions I have is whether or not Iran's command and control system still is tight and whether or not there's going to be any type of sort of rogue actions that it might be taken on behalf of the Iranian, people. And so I think we really have to still wait to hear from both Iran and Israel, the main protagonists in this conflict, about whether or not a ceasefire really is going to be put in place and whether or not it will hold.
We are monitoring any news, and we will bring folks that along the lines of what we know that happened today. NBC News is reporting, and Richard Engel has been all over this story. And he specifically said that the nature of the strike and well-defended targets indicate that Iran's retaliatory strike was a symbolic attack, and that Qatar was also reportedly informed ahead of the attack. Our reporting also notes that Qatar was informed by the Iranians. Qatar then informed the United States. As of right now, there are no casualties. Lots of people had described this as an off-ramp. What say you?
I think the Iranians clearly recognize that if the United States wanted to do more damage inside of Iran, we certainly have the military capability to do that. Iran doesn't have the ability to defend many of its targets, as it's shown.
I agree with them. I don't think they got the ability to do a long-range attack like we did. That's why I feel like our attack was more of a show of force to show that we are capable to touch them a lot easier than they capable of touching us. So I think it was more about that than the actual inflict damage, to hit them little things, but to show them we could go hit y'all and be back home sleeping before y'all even know what happened.
The Israelis really have riddled that country's defense network. And so I think Iran was trying to find out what it could do that would, in fact, signal that these strikes were unacceptable from the United States, and so wanted to do something. But as you pointed out, the strikes against the attempted strikes in Qatar, and with the Qataris and the United States being made aware of it in advance, I think it demonstrated that the Iranians are really trying to show restraint here, and I think are trying to approach this in a way that is seeking to de-escalate the tension, the conflict. And I really do hope that others are going to follow the Iranian lead as far as trying to bring down this conflict so that we don't see the region engulfed in flames.
Well, last night you had the President of the United States going to Truth Social to talk about regime change, and you had Steve Bannon today warning that regime change, which I would call regime collapse, could lead to U.S. military in Iran. Do you agree?
Well, it certainly could. The record on regime change in the Middle East is not good. Whether you're talking about Iraq or Syria or Libya, it's easy enough to carry out these military strikes and defang, the regimes and even bring them down. But what happens in the days and weeks, months and years afterward? And we're still dealing with the repercussions of what I think was a very misguided U.S. decision to invade Iraq in 2003. So I think the repercussions of what has happened over the past several days are still to be felt. And we have to see exactly how the Iranians are going to react, what the Israelis are going to do. But I don't think by any means that this issue has been put to bed, because the underlying issue about what Iran is going to be allowed to do with its nuclear program and whether or not it will be allowed to enrich uranium, which was the sticking point in the recent negotiations, is going to be something that will be addressed. But at this point, I think there are still more questions than answers.
Taking a sort of a wider lens to the developments over the last few days and even weeks, when you consider Israel's actions, the Washington Post had a very interesting narrative around the risky strike Trump's put his presidency on the line, and they noted former Presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden confronted similar dilemmas with Iran and made a different calculation than Trump, though neither faced a Tehran that was quite as weak as it is now in the aftermath of the collapse of its proxies in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. Rather than strikes, those presidents
They talking shit. Obama wasn't playing with them drone strikes. He was bombing the fuck out of the Middle East, man. He was bombing the fuck out of the Middle East. He was goddamn deporting everybody. They was calling him the deporter in chief. So, I mean, shit. Obama moved his fair share of regimes too in his time while he was in office, them 8 years. You know, so like, you know, he wasn't no slouch when it came to wartime. You gotta give him credit for that. Might not agree with a lot of shit that he did, but he wasn't no slouch when it came to wartime. Remember, he took out Osama.
Sought a diplomatic pathway to limit Iran's ability to build a nuclear weapon, fearing the possibility of getting sucked into a conflict they did not desire. There are a couple of things here that I think are interesting to make note of. One is Obama and even Bush, for that matter, but certainly Joe Biden, dealt with a very different Iran than the one that Donald Trump has had to deal with, given how they were, if you put it in street terms, softened up by the strikes by Israel beforehand. But the other part of this is the possibility of getting sucked into a conflict they did not desire. Is that still a risk for Donald Trump at this point, despite his, bravado with his, all caps tweets and all of that, that there's still an aspect of this Tehran, Iranian kind of storyline that could see the U.S. still grappling with this a year, 2 years, 3 years from now?
No, absolutely, because we don't know where this is headed. And you're not going to be able to resolve this issue by military force. Yes, we've degraded, significantly, damaged the Iranian nuclear program, but there's going to have to be some type of negotiated settlement on this. There's some type of negotiation that's going to address the Iranian nuclear program, which is why the Obama administration worked so hard to get the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in place.
Right.
And so Donald Trump, when he tore up the U.S., agreements to that, basically allowed the Iranians then to go on this path. We wouldn't be where we are today if, in fact, we still had that agreement in place. Because Fordo...
That's an important note to make.
Yeah, Fordo was prohibited from enriching uranium, period.
Right.
And the Iranians were limited by enriching uranium only to like 3.5% level, which is far, far below weapons grade. And the IAEA, who had a very invasive inspection regime. And so the reason why we are here is because Donald Trump, again, pulled out of the agreement. He didn't say no to Bibi Netanyahu, who wanted to go ahead and strike Israel, while Presidents Biden, President Obama, and President Bush told Bibi no. And also, he's the first president to actually carry out these strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. So, again, we still have a lot to learn. We don't know where this is going to go. Hopefully, it's going to go in a better direction. Nobody wants to have the region just collapse in conflict. But at the same time, if they think that this one and done is it, I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen.
To your point about Fordo, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency said, this is a quote from yesterday's emergency United Nations meeting. At this time, no one, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, is in a position to assess the underground damage at Fordo. You juxtapose that with the claims that the president and, his Secretary of Defense on down are claiming that completely obliterated the site was. No, the Director General of the agency that could say that says no one can assess that at this point. I say that to say this all boils down to the intelligence. And I still think that there are questions, and tell me if I'm wrong, but are there not questions on the table about what prompted the administration to do this? They keep saying that they had information, but the United States did not have that information. So where did that information come from? What information is prompting them to make claims as though the sites were obliterated? The intelligence is actually very important because the intelligence, it should be guiding what we're doing, or am I wrong?
When our intelligence agency says, hey, Iran didn't have the capabilities that the president claimed that they did for the attack.
I think the credibility of this administration really has been shattered. I don't think it was ever strong, but it has been shattered over the past several weeks. The U.S. intelligence community, by all accounts, still assesses that Iran has not restarted their nuclear weapons program, which they suspended in 2003. There's been no contrary claims by this administration that the U.S. intelligence has changed on that front whatsoever. And even if they were moving, as they were, with more highly enriched uranium, they still were far away from actually being able to get a warhead. So what was the triggering event that led the U.S. to actually carry out these strikes? Clearly, I think, as Michael pointed out, Iran is in a much different place now with Hezbollah and the Houthis and others that really have been degraded. And so Bibi Netanyahu saw that this was a great opportunity, a very propitious moment for Israel to go and hit Iran. And Bibi Netanyahu led Donald Trump down this path. And unfortunately, Donald Trump followed what Bibi Netanyahu was saying. So again, I think there are a lot of questions about what that intelligence was, at what basis did this administration decide to go ahead and carry out these strikes, and also then what's going to be the bomb damage assessment that's going to actually be taking place, and how significantly degraded is the Iranian nuclear program. And I think we have real questions about whether or not this administration will be honest.
Only have about 30 seconds left of picking up on that point, Director Brennan. If you were a member of Congress, what is the one piece of intelligence you think would be most critical for you to have in your hands?
The latest intelligence assessment about the status of that Iranian nuclear program, but then also I want to know what the status of the Iranian nuclear program is, and especially where is that highly enriched uranium that was enriched to 60% that seems to have been moved out of Fordo before the strikes took place, and what's the disposition of that, and what's the potential for Iran to use that for nefarious purposes?
Easy. Let's see if there's any new news. It is exactly 12 o'clock midnight. Exactly the deadline, Eastern Standard Time, for the actual ceasefire. So do they got any news? Yeah, it's probably too soon. It's only 12:01. Too soon to see. Ceasefire as of now.
You might know Harbor Freight for affordability.
About to
What you
call it a
might
night,
not
though.
know
I
is
feel
performance
everybody
and durability go right along with.
Then that came out, stepped in and see. Say what up. I appreciate y'all. Depending on what's going on, might jump on here tomorrow. We keep it going. But it don't look like it's nothing to write home about yet. That is too early to see if they're gonna hold up the bargain. So with that being said, tonight was a good night. It was great. And yeah, we do this another time. But I speak to y'all. Like I said, everybody that tuned in, take a chance out. If you like what you heard, if you agreed with it, today was kind of slow in the chat, not like yesterday, but we did record-breaking numbers yesterday. And yeah, I appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll holler at y'all tomorrow, mañana, or the day after, if I ain't too busy. Peace.